So, there's a big rumor circulating that Dustin Poirier might be gearing up for a fight against Colby Covington. This buzz started when a Reddit post suggested that Poirier's comeback might not be against a lightweight contender, but rather against Covington, who is a top welterweight contender and one of Poirier's biggest rivals. Covington's known for his trash talk. He has a history of targeting Poirier and even involving his family in verbal jabs. If this fight does happen, it's rumored to take place at UFC 309 in MSG this November, and fans are already talking about how intense this matchup can be, given their past drama. Now, I think there's a pretty solid chance that this fight actually happens, but of course, it's wise to take it with a grain of salt until something official comes out. That being said, it makes a lot of sense for Dustin Poirier. When you look at the lightweight division, there aren't any big names left for him to face. He already lost to Islam, he fought Gaethje twice, and he's been in the cage with Hooker and Oliveira. The only top 5 guy he hasn't fought yet is Arman Tsarukyan, who's literally on his way for a title shot, and I don't think Dustin would want to fight his teammate anyways. And look, man, at this stage in his career, Dustin Poirier really is looking for that big fight that he hasn't had yet. He's already gone up against most of the big names in the lightweight division, so moving up to the welterweight division and fighting Covington actually makes a lot of sense, especially considering their ongoing feud. Covington might not be the biggest name Dustin has ever fought, but he's still a big name. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight ends up as the co-main event for UFC 309, especially if Stipe is facing Jones on that same card. But if the fight doesn't happen, I could easily see this being bumped up to the main event on UFC 309. Now, as for Colby Covington, this fight also makes a lot of sense for him to take because a lot of people accuse him of dodging tougher competition. You know, you hear it a lot that he avoid guys like Ian Gary, Khamzat Chimaev. Covington kind of developed a reputation for being very selective with his matchups, let's be real. I mean, just look at his last 3 fights besides the title fights with Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. He fought Jorge Masvidal, T. Wood, and Robbie Lawler. When you consider the current welterweight division, just about everyone in the top 10 is a tough matchup and pose a huge risk for him. So a fight with Dustin Poirier might seem a little safer, but still a high profile option. But if you ask me, I truly believe Covington kind of needs this fight too, because either he takes on a big name like Dustin Poirier or he faces a tough reality. Everyone in the top 10 at the welterweight division is legit, and while Covington is solid, I think most of the top 5 could handle him. His fight against Leon Edwards wasn't exactly anything thrilling, so he really needs a big fight to stay relevant, especially since he's nearly the end of his career. Plus, Dana White seems to really back him up, so I could definitely see this matchup happening. Now, personally, I'm okay with this fight if it does actually happen. I mean, it's gonna be Dustin's swan song, you know? He's trying to have that big fight before he leaves, and this is the kind of matchup that I think a lot of people would be interested in, especially for the build-up and the fight itself. These two guys are big names, they have a storyline, and if you ask me, it's just a fun matchup. I just don't think it should be the main event of a pay-per-view, but I'd rather prefer it to be a co-main event or something like that, you know? Now, if this fight between Covington and Poirier actually does go down, I think it's pretty clear that Dustin Poirier will come out on top. To me, it's a no-brainer because we just saw the best version of Dustin Poirier in his last fight against Islam Makhachev. He surprised a lot of people, and that includes myself as well, by showing great grappling defense. He managed to get up multiple times against Islam, which isn't easy to say the least, and his boxing was sharp too. Before, I might have thought Covington could dominate him with his wrestling, but now I have my doubts. Especially considering that Covington's last fight against Leon Edwards was a terrible performance. He kind of pulled a Yoel Romero, you know what I'm talking about? He barely did anything for 5 rounds. Yeah, there was still talk of him being injured, but he still didn't push the pace at all, and he looked gun shy. He just got outpointed throughout the fight, and that kind of performance really hurts his momentum. It's hard to feel confident in Covington going into any fight after that. Now, you can argue that it was just a night off, but even so, Covington hasn't been very active lately. On the other hand, Dustin has been consistently active, fighting every year and showing significant improvement with each bout. Now, don't get me wrong, if we see the old Covington, his volume might be effective at first. However, I believe that over time, Dustin will find it easier to get back on his feet and eventually outbox him and turn this fight into a brawl. Covington is not as good as people think, and I believe this fight will expose that, much like what happened in his last fight against Leon. And I'm calling it right now. I believe that Dustin Poirier will finally land the guillotine choke on Covington, and then he will ride off into the sunset. Now, can you imagine that? After all the times he tried to pull it off, for him to nail it in his last fight would be wild. Plus, I think Dustin walks around at 190 pounds, while Covington is like around 180 to 190 as well. I'm pretty sure that's Covington walk around weight, if I'm not mistaken. And typically fighters who move up a weight class tend to do well. With all that being in mind, I really think Dustin got this in the bag, and honestly, he'll probably come in as the favorite too. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below if you guys think this fight is actually gonna happen, and if it does, who do you guys have to win this fight? And let me know what you guys think about the video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like always guys, I'll see you guys on my next one.